Good afternoon, everyone. This is Seth Moore again, coming to you here on Anchor by Spotify. We hope that you're having a great afternoon, and it is rainy here in the Love State, and we say to you that we hope that you're staying high and that you're staying vibratory, and all is good. Okay, Tom, today we're going to be talking about something real profound. I actually contemplated bringing this forth because I know it's going to go over most people's heads. And so, with that being said, I really did ponder. I took a while before I made my mind up to bring this forward, because I know that most people, who espouse to, biblical writ and the Bible and so forth. I know that most people take things literal. They dismiss allegories, parables, and what I want to say to you is that everything that you either read or study, it is not literal. A lot of it's in allegories. They're to get you to hone in on the esoteric, elucidation of what it's actually saying spiritually. And oftentimes it's referring to your inner higher consciousness. Okay. And it has nothing to do with, or very little, let me put it that way, to do with actual events as it relates to you and a higher ascension of what and who you are and how that is actually attained. Okay, so for that reason, I really held back, and I said, I'm gonna take a minute and just really think about this. I said, because this is gonna go over most people's heads, because it's real profound information, and most people, and when I say most, I mean just that. I mean most, because there are those who are in this awakening and those who are espousing to knowing thyself, okay? And those who are seeking to reach that higher esoteric, manifestation, okay? And a lot of times it has very little to do with what's outside of you as much as it is what's going on within you and your etherical essence. And and I've said this many times before, that we've been tricked. But for those who are coming out of this matrix and those who are actually ascending to that higher place, because they are beginning to open themselves up to the spiritual essence of who they are, and they're beginning to gravitate towards that higher ascension, and they're vibrating, on a higher frequency because of the fact that they've been open and they've allowed and lend themselves to having an open spirit and an open mind and an open heart to receive, this esoteric information. Because there are those who are not willing to do that because they're stuck. They're stuck in a matrix. They're stuck in saying that this is true and there's nothing else, and they're not going any further. Okay. So I want to bring some stuff to your attention. I want to see, because as I said, everything is not literal, and the problem has been for a lot of us is that we've taken everything literal and we've made it a tangible. We've made it tangible in the physical. We've made it, but we haven't made it tangible in the spiritual, but we've made it tangible in the physical. See, and you, unfortunately, a lot of us have allowed people to shape and to form what the spiritual is for us. You know what I mean? And to define who, quote unquote, what God is, not realizing that God is you. And I'm going to bring this to you. See, because, and I just want to say this before we get started. You've been so dumbed down. A lot of us been so dumbed down to make us think that we were less than spiritually, and even as a living entity, to make us think that we need saving. We need saving. We're so messed up that we need saving. So think about this for a moment. Anything that would tell you that you're so messed up that you need somebody to come and rescue you because you can't do nothing on your own. What's that sound like to you? And so that immediately puts you in a spiritual posture where you say, man, I can't do nothing. I mean, think about that for a moment. Yeah, it puts you in a posture where you feel helpless. Okay, and then it'll come back. It'll make you feel helpless, and then it'll come back and tell you 5 minutes later that you're not helpless. Come on now, y'all. Really? Think about that for a moment. And I've said this before. So we bought in to this idea that because a lot of us are still at this point, a lot of us are still waiting, thinking that there's very little that we have to do in actually fixing, or let me not even say fixing, bringing ourselves to a higher consciousness where we reach that Christhood. Because that's all it really is to be a Christ, is that you have to ascend to a certain consciousness. But you ain't been taught that, because you have been made to be dependent on an outside entity rather than going within and raising what they call in the Indian pantheon your kundalini. So we're going to start. We're going to get started. And we're going to be talking about the sacred secret. And I had did some other podcasts before where I mentioned some of this as far as the golden ratio and so forth. And, you could talk about pi. Pi is what the Kemites actually instituted in world spirituality through Mayat and so forth, and how they were able to mathematically circumference the universe and be able to build some of the world's renowned structures in terms of the geometrical patterns and so forth, and begin to be able to devise all these things because of their knowledge, spiritual knowledge. And we're going to delve into some of this. So what we're going to start out with, we're going to start out with 33, okay? Now, this should be very familiar to you because you know that Yeshua, the one that they call Jesus, which is a Greek word, Isus, okay? We know that he started his ministry at 33 years old. And so what does 33 represent? Okay, so 33 represents the principle of 33, of the 33rd, which is the 33rd vertebrae within your spine. Within your spine. You know what your spine is. That's your back. There's 33 vertebrae within your spine. And each of those vertebrae represent a principle. Okay, and the first principle, let's go to the first principle. The first principle of the 33rd vertebrae is awareness. That's the first principle. Remember, we did a podcast where we talked about the awareness. Okay? Being aware of your awareness. Because when the awareness comes into play, you consciously and subconsciously, you're aware of your higher consciousness. First and foremost, there has to be an awareness that you exist spiritually, that there's a higher consciousness spiritually. You're aware of that. And most of us are not. Most of us are not. Okay, the second principle is feeling. And this is the second principle in the vertebrae, is feeling. Being able to feel and your consciousness and to know oneself, to know thyself. See, and oftentimes what happens is, in the feeling part, a lot of us get lost. See, because we allow the feeling, and I've said this before, we allow the feeling and the emotion to take us off track. See, because now, rather than you taking the feeling and being able to be aware of what's actually happening, you take it and you go somewhere totally different with it, with emotions. You get confused with emotions, and the emotions take you out of the awareness of what's really going on. You get lost. You get lost. The third principle is discrimination of the vertebrae. Okay, And you have to be discriminatory about your higher spiritual etherical consciousness. You can't not allow other things to infiltrate your 33rd or your vertebrae when it comes to that level. Okay? If you hear a little bit of noise in the background, I got some people working in the house. They're doing some things, so and what I'll probably have to do is cut it short, because if it's making too much noise, but I think we'll be able to get through it. But at the same time, I'm not going to try to give you all of this in one podcast. Okay. So the 4th vertebrae is love. Okay. The 5th vertebrae is expression. The 6th vertebrae is vision. The 7th vertebrae is divinity, which we often say that 7 is the number of completion. The earth vertebrae is time. The 9th vertebrae is soul. The 10th vertebrae is groundedness. The 11th vertebrae is connection. The 11th vertebrae is transition. Then the 12th is connection. The 13th vertebrae is yin. And the 14th vertebrae is yang. The 15th is polarities. The 16th vertebrae is similarities. The 17th vertebrae is harmony. The 18th vertebrae is freedom. The 19th vertebrae, as mentioned earlier, is the kundalini. Okay? And that comes out of the Indian pantheon. Okay? And the 20th vertebrae is mastery. The 21st vertebrae is abundance. The 22nd is clarity. The 23rd is knowledge. The 24th is creation. The 25th vertebrae is manifestation. The 26th vertebrae is alignment. The 27th vertebrae is peace. The 28th vertebrae is wisdom. 29th vertebrae is enjoyment. The 30th vertebrae is forgiveness. The 31st vertebrae is faith. And the 32nd vertebrae is grace. And the 33rd vertebrae is when you reach that Christ ascension. That's the highest vertebrae. And so this is why you'll find. Okay, moving right along, and we had a brief interruption here, but we're right back. And as I was mentioning, that 33rd vertebrae is where that ascension takes place. And so again, this is why in the Masons, when you reach that 33rd degree, what they call the 33rd degree, you have reached a pinnacle where you've actually achieved a certain amount of knowledge, and you achieve a certain height where your kundalini is raised to a Christ level. Okay, to a Christ level. Okay, so now, what does that mean? What does that mean? So we're going to go into the place of the Most High. So now we're talking about what happens in your pineal gland, which is, they call the black dot, which is in the back of your brain. It's formed like the Ark of the Covenant. They call it the claustrum. Okay, the claustrum. Okay, because you have a right hemisphere in your brain, you have a left hemisphere in your brain. Okay, so what happens is there is this what they call this secretion that takes place like an oil that drips down from the your pineal gland, okay, and it goes down the 33rd vertebrae of your spine. Okay, so there's two substances that emanate from that pineal gland. Okay, and one is like an oily substance that goes down the vertebrae of your spine. And as I just read to you, all those principles of the 33rd vertebrae. Now, one is an oily substance and one is like a milky substance. Okay? And so what happens is that those substances act as the substance to nourish. Okay, so again, the covenant has it has around your vertebrae, well, not your vertebrae, but in the colostrum of your mind, of your brain, it has these. And if you were to look at this under a microscope, you will be able to see the colostrum of your brain where it has like angel wings around it. And so the substance, it comes from the colostrum, okay? It comes from the colostrum within what they call, in the hemisphere of your brain, they call it the oblum dublum gatum, okay? So let me go through my notes here. And so in this hemisphere of where the colostrum is, it is called, that substance is called, that drips down from your pineal gland, is called the Jordan River. Now listen to this. It's called the Jordan River, the river of God. It's this semi-liquid or lunar ganglion. As the Jordan River empties into the Dead Sea. Now, what is the Dead Sea? So that the spinal cord terminates in the section of the anatomy known as Sodom, the region in which Josephus referred to as the Lake of Sidon or Sodom. Okay, now I'm going to say some things that's going to mess you up. And you're going to probably say, oh man, this dude is crazy, bruh. This dude done went off this rocker. He's mad. Okay, so now, Jesus was not a savior until he was Christed, baptized, or anointed of John, not by John. Now listen to this. He was not Christed until he was baptized or anointed of John, not by John. John, or Lonis, is the oil or ointment. You hear what I just said? John is, or Lonis, or the oil or ointment. So John is the ointment that runs from the pineal gland down the 33rd vertebrae, which causes your pineal gland, and which causes the baptism of your consciousness. and it comes back up as a resurrection. And I'll prove this to you. And so when this oil and what they call, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because I get excited because this is real profound. This secretion that comes from your pineal gland, and what happens is you are secreting more of this fluid in the midnight hours. Okay? And it talks between 29 and a half days where it's the strongest. We'll get to that though. Okay, we'll get to that. So this sacred oil is called the ointment of John. John, just as I just read, is baptized. It says let me read it again to you. It says baptized or anointed of John, not by John. John or Laonis is the oil or the ointment. Listen. The sacred fluids from the colostrum are yellow, and the other white is the milk and honey. My. So now, isn't that profound? The oil, now this is what the Bible talks about, right? It says milk and honey, right? So the oil that runs from your pineal down your vertebrae, and the white substance is the milk, because there's two secretions that are happening simultaneously. So they call this the milk and honey. You ain't with me. You not with me. Referred to in the Bible, the children of Israel having been given the promise of return to the land flowing with milk and honey. Okay? Note, substance comes from your medulla, as we spoke of earlier, which looks like the Ark of the Covenant in its shape and image, like angel wings. This liquid substance, melatonin, listen up. This liquid substance, melatonin, hormone that helps maintain our sleep pattern and overall health. Okay? So that's what this does. That's what it does, because, as mentioned, this secretion is at work more during sleep. When you're sleeping, you're secreting more of this oil substance and this milky substance when you're sleeping. This is where you get your dream states from. And your dream states in the subconscious is really where you're living at. That's who you are. That's really who you are. In your dream states and your subconscious, that is your spiritual and etherical being of your essence of who you really are. Okay? That is you. Okay, so 1 second. I want to so that I can actually see. Make sure I got on my glasses here. Okay, so now so this is the saved substance that we're actually talking about, that emanates from your pineal going down your 33rd vertebrae, okay, and secreting that milk and honey. Excuse me. This is the sacred substance of that's trenching down the spinal cord, okay? Corpus cerebrum. Lateral and its ventricle choroid plexus. Farina. So now, and we're going to get into the solar plexus that we know that's within the middle of your chest. And I'm going to tell you what that is. This is deep, y'all. I'm trying to tell you. So this, again, I want you to be able to understand and overstand that most of what you hear is not literal. It's about your spiritual essence, who you are, and how to raise your kundalini, or to raise your vibratory essence to a Christed position. See, because, again, think about this. A lot of us are looking for something to come scoop us out of this. And we're not even, see, and you're not even prepared. You're not even prepared mentally and according to what the scripture talks about. You are not ready. See, you have to ready your spiritual self. How many times have I said this before? That you have to ready yourself for an ascension, as opposed to looking for an outside entity to come scoop you up out of something that you biblically are not prepared for. You're not postured for. It's about what you do spiritually. That's what it's about. So the third ventricle, as we talked, let me grab my other glasses. Give me a sec. Okay, so now, the choroid plexus, fornix, third ventricle, medullary, lamina, intermediate mass, the third ventricle optic tract, corpora media. Within the spheres of the pineal structure is the nucleus conduits shaped like the all-seeing eye. So that's what it looks like. It looks like the all-seeing eye within that ventricle area of your brain. See, our Creator was great in what he did. And so this is why when you look at Kemetic theology and you see a lot of us have been so brainwashed to think that they use, and I've said this many times before, they used your science against you and made you believe that they were worshiping other gods. See how they tricked you? See how they tricked you to keep you from getting to your higher consciousness and to keep you from getting to your Christed state? And so it says, and I'm just see, because I have so many notes here, I'm just I'm moving around, and I'm giving you some bits and pieces, because as I said, a lot of you are not ready for this. You're not ready for it. So that's what it is. As I mentioned, is Christ coming down into human form. That oil and milk that goes down the 33rd vertebrae of your spine, and then it comes back up, right? Creating a reservoir extension in your higher consciousness, where you become a Christed individual, or entity is a better term. And so into human form, it ascends again and goes back up to heaven. It's also the story of Santa Claus. Believe it or not, that's why they call it the claustrum. And this is why the story of Santa Claus about coming down the chimney is an allegory of that secretion of oil and milk coming down the 33rd vertebrae. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? So they'll trick you with all kinds of stuff because you don't know what time it is esoterically and etherically.
Join Wawa Rewards today and get a free hot or iced coffee reward every Tuesday. Gotta have a Wawa.
And so as we just said, this, and we're doing something a little different today in terms of the music. And so what I want to do is, because I really don't, I don't want no banging music. I ain't with that. I ain't with that. So we're gonna go back to our. We're gonna go back to. Give me a moment. Okay, so yeah. So, anyways. Okay. So that's pretty deep, right? Yeah. I'm telling you. See, that's why I contemplated bringing this to you, because I said, man, most folk ain't going to be ready for this. You ain't going to be ready for this, but I'm giving you some straight truth. This is what's up. This is the truth. So it's about you reaching your higher etherical self. You know what I'm saying? And so again, they got you to believe in all these tangible things and literal things that you would want to espouse to keep you from your higher self. You see what I'm talking about? You see what it does? And see, it keeps you dependent. It keeps you dependent on something, rather than saying, I should be one with the cosmos and with the universe and with anything spiritual, because everything that you are is spiritual. It's not religious. Get off of that religious stuff. That's what's kept you in bondage. That's what has a lot of us in bondage today, because you're still on a religious tip. It's about spirituality, your higher etherical self, your higher consciousness. So it has different names and different pantheons of spirituality, okay? And so if you don't understand that, in the sacred secret of what is actually happening, that you'll miss it. And again, like I said, many different names. In the spiritual awakening and enlightenment, although the sacred secret is known by many names, okay? It bears a common theme in all the traditions. And it says the same thing, that down your 33rd vertebrae, what happens is, where you see that serpent snake that coils down the spine. It coils down like a snake, okay, at the base of the spine. And every human being resides dormant, the primordial essence of that snake. But what happens is when you activate it, when you activate the kundalini and you activate that secretion of oil and milk, which are the milk and honey, what happens is, and they call it, of course, the 7 chakras, from the base spine all the way up to the crown chakra, where that secretion actually activates. It creates a higher consciousness where you hone in on your third eye. You tap in, and when that third eye is opened, that's when the secretion process happens. And it goes down the 33rd vertebrae to create what we call that Christed higher experience of baptismo of that oil, which is called John, as I read to you, as the ointment that releases that sacred milk and honey. And it goes right back up to the resurrected crown chakra where you get that higher ascension. Okay? And so what they call it, again, all that power, all the way up to the summit of our brains, rebirthing a resurrection power from within. Okay? And as I mentioned to you earlier, that it happens to your pineal gland every 29 and a half days. You have an eye-opening experience. That's if, mind you, that's if you are honing in on your higher consciousness and practicing opening in your third eye through meditation, through extracting yourself from all material forms, through not giving yourself over to the lust of this world and materialism and you know, all these things that will block and keep your pineal gland or that sacred thing dormant. You follow me? Okay. And as I said, we're not going to get through all of this. I'm giving you bits and pieces. Okay. But this is very profound. And I'm trying to get you to know your higher self. Because that's really your out. See, because as we see what's going on in the world today with all this stuff that's going on, and you've heard me say many times before how that there's going to be, and I say I may not see it as you see it, you may not see it as I see it, but this return of the gods is you and me. The return of the gods is meshing with the spiritual entities that are going to show up, who are on this higher conscious level, okay? And as you probably heard before, that the wheel in the middle of the wheel, these ships that are actually going to show up, and there's going to be emerging. That's why when it says in the scriptures, you shall be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. You're not going to change if you're not doing anything. The change is you. The change is you. So esoterically and spiritually, you have to understand revelatory what it's actually saying. That the change is within you. You shall be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, when you hone in on your ethereal essence of who you are. And if I'm wrong, Creator will correct me. But what I'm giving you, I mean, how think about this too. Let's make sense out of stuff. How do people expect to change if they're not doing anything? You think, and I know most of you a lot of times think that I'm knocking you and I'm bashing you and all this kind of stuff. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to get you to open up that third eye, okay? Because, you say, by going to a church, it's not about going to a building. It's about going within, opening up your spirit, opening up your heart to receive. You cannot receive if you're closed-minded, if your heart is closed and you're saying, oh, this is it. No. So, as I said before, in the third eye activation is when you're honing in on that sacred secretion that is coming from the pineal gland, okay, that's going down the colostrum of the 33rd vertebrae, and all those principles that I read to you, they'll begin to activate and come alive. You begin to have mastery. This is through. It doesn't happen overnight, because it's not happening overnight for me, and it hasn't. But I'm able to hone in on what is actually taking place within this whole metamorphosis. Okay, you'll begin to see things. You'll begin to see images. And it's not for you to be afraid of, because your third eye is open. You'll begin to see these things. Things will be walking by you. And you're not afraid because you already know what time it is. These are things in the spirit. These are things in the higher consciousness. And as mentioned earlier, that coiled serpent that's on your vertebrae, which is called, or can be translated to the Kundalini within the Indian pantheon. They all spoke the same language because they was all on a higher consciousness. Okay, and so in Gnostic Christianity is known as the process of raising the chrism, which is that Christed energy. Okay? So again, that fluid that has been secreted in the brain that's coiling itself down the 33rd vertebrae to activate and opening up the third eye. Okay, in yogic terms, it is sometimes referred to as the spiritual spine, and forth in some of this knowledge. Okay. And so this is what has been hidden deep within religious traditions, reserved for only the most elite. They don't want you to have this knowledge. So this is the knowledge that has been hidden. This is the knowledge that's been hidden from you to keep you in a religious mode, and you will never reach your higher Christ itself. Because think about the great feats that our ancestors were able to do. They have pyramids that are still standing today after 5,000, 10,000 years. Some say they've probably been standing for 20,000 years. They're the only ancient structures on the planet that are still standing today, aligned with Orion's belt in the heavens, as above, so below. As above, so below. So as above in your crown chakra, so below. We bring down heaven. You bring down heaven as that sacred secretion begins to emanate and begins to produce itself down the 33rd vertebrae of your spine, creating a baptism of oil and resurrect it back up to the crown chakra. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a little bit more, and we're going to stop for today, and we're going to pick this up, because this is a series, y'all. This is a study. And I don't want to rush this, but I want to give it to you I want to give it to you because I have a lot of information. I have a lot of information. Excuse me. I have a lot of information. Okay, so it says here. I'm gonna finish up with this, and we're gonna come back. I'm gonna finish up with this, and we are gonna come back. So, in the consciousness of man, we talked about baptism, knighting, initiation is what they call the sword in the stone. Okay. And it also, we talked about the angel wings, the cerebellum. Cerebellum within your brain is actually the cherubims. They talked about the angels. So the cerebellum is actually the angel. We talked about the angel wings, right? Sent to what is that right here? Sent to guard God's glory. So within your brain structure, where they call the cerebellum, is the angel wings to guard God's glory. What is God's glory? God's glory is your pineal gland that secretes the sacred oil. That is sacred oil. That's why in the scriptures, when it said, when they came, listen to this now. When they came to trim their lamps, remember in the scriptures, remember when they came to trim their lamps, and it says, give us of your oil. Now listen to this. This is deep. They could not get into the kingdom because they didn't have enough oil within their lamps. What is your lamp? Your lamp is your brain. Your lamp is your head crown chakra. And within the crown chakra, there has to be an sufficient amount of oil that secretes from your crown chakra down your colostrum and the 33rd vertebrae to reach the higher consciousness. So those who came for oil and didn't have enough oil, what does that say? They did not allow themselves to open up their colostrum to receive spiritual understanding and spiritual heightening to become that Christed individual where they can raise themselves to a Christed state to enter in. Oh man, you ain't ready? Come on now. This is what I'm trying to tell you. This is what I'm saying. It's about you raising that you can have that oil, open up that pineal, open up the third eye, so that process can begin to happen. So that you can guard God's glory. So the 10 Commandments, God's law, channeled information, downloads, upgrades. Aaron's staff is likened to the spine. Or Thor's Hermes caduceus. I'm gonna stop. I don't want to give you too much. This is profound. So we're gonna stop there, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna pick up on this. I just want to give you a little bit at a time. I don't want to overwhelm you because this is profound, profound, profound. So until the next time, we will see you guys again. So continue to support, smash that button, and we will continue to bring you this esoteric knowledge so that you can reach your higher ascension. So until next time, again, this is Seth Moore coming to you here on Anchor by Spotify. See you the next time. And remember, you are always listening to Scott Buckley and his orchestra. Stay tuned until the next podcast. We will see you again here on Anchor by Spotify. This is Seth Moore coming to you again. Have a great day. Thank you and take care.